Hello, everyone. Derek here from Matricon. In this session, I'll be talking about brownfield modernization and using gateways or aggregators in order to help facilitate that. So let's set this up. First of all, you have basically two scenarios. You either have a brownfield situation where you've got existing infrastructure in place already, and that may have been installed many years ago, 20, 30 or more years ago. So some of the data that's generated from those systems might not have much protection at all, not much security. The context might be questionable. Maybe you've got a lot of Modbus devices just serving you data and register values and without much more context than that. You also have proprietary systems, and you've also invested a lot of money into it over the years, and you're trying to maximize the value you get from that. On the other hand, you might have new installations where basically you're putting in some of the latest and greatest equipment. You've got much better security built in. There's much more awareness or adherence to open standards. The contextual information is richer, but of course it comes at a cost. So if you're building a new site, that's okay, and it's of course you're going to use the best technology that you can given today. However, if you've got an existing site, now the question is, well, how do you move that whole thing forward? So of course, a blended approach works the best in this case. So it's kind of a phased migration where you're not, ripping out all the old stuff and putting in brand new things, because that's not only economically not feasible, but also it's a huge change to bring about in the operations of the company, and also even training people up to get that all running. So the question is, well, how do you move the company forward as a whole? How do you preserve those existing investments while minimizing the costs for bringing in new systems? And the way to do that with OPC-UA, in one part is to use OPC-UA gateways, which serve a number of functions. So a gateway generally is it is a generic term, but it does certain things regardless of which vendor you get it from. There'll be variations in what functionality is actually included, but overall you'll get a common kind of idea of what a gateway will do. So number one, to address the fact that you might have older systems or systems that are still running OPC Classic, which was the dominant open standard way for doing data communications in the past, is the ability to do a conversion, a live conversion between the classic components and the OPC-UA components that they needs to talk to. So in this case, if you have an OPC-UA gateway, one of the things that you want is a component that would enable either a OPC Classic client to talk to it, and therefore you need a translation in order to translate from the Classic client to the UA server that the OPC-UA gateway is, or you need the OPC-UA gateway to be able to communicate with OPC Classic server. So even though it's UA based, it then translates and actually talks OPC Classic to the server, but then it maintains its own OPC UA functionality, let's say internally. So some examples of software that does that, Matricon OPC UA Tunneler, it does the conversions. Also, Unified Automation has their UA gateway, same thing. They will also facilitate that translation live. So a gateway then would be able to communicate with those components while also, of course, communicating OPC UA. The other side of this is to say, okay, well, once you establish those communications, you also want to be able to group those sources that are coming into the gateway into a common access point, and actually have the rest of the enterprise or the rest of the components pulling information from those sources to come to one point, which is why you federated everything, and it's at the gateway. So things like Matricon Data Broker, or again, Unified Automation's UA Gateway, will do that. When they federate the sources, they do a number of things to help protect them, because you don't now need to connect directly to the data sources. So for the older ones, if they don't have sufficient security built into them, well, now you're actually getting people to connect directly to the gateway, and it employs OPC UA security. You also don't need to actually load down those data sources, because the single connection from the gateway actually facilitates that communication, and then all the other clients sitting above it will actually connect to the gateway, not to the data sources. Okay, and by bringing all those together, you basically have one common place, one connection that you need to make, and within that address space in the gateway, you can find all the information that you need from the different areas. So if you've got older systems that are using OPC Classic servers to facilitate talking to proprietary communications, or they just natively talk OPC Classic, this will convert them to OPC UA. And then once they're all put together, you can, of course, communicate with OPC UA components or even classic ones if that's required as well. So that's really what a gateway does for you. So it's kind of a winning combination, let's say, where you bring together the OPC UA functionality together with your existing infrastructure to have sort of a phased migration scenario where the OPC UA gateway facilitates that. So number one, you can start to adopt new components, the OPC UA based ones, without hindering using the existing older equipment. And some of the benefits are, again, the data security that comes from that, because in the end, you are getting end-to-end security that the gateway provides going up. You get you're protecting those data sources because things aren't connecting directly to them. So that reduces the loading on them. And then as well, you increase actually the value of the data, or potentially you can, because one of the features in gateways, for example, like Data Broker, is the ability to bring in information models and map the data sources, information that comes from them, to various information models that you read in, or companion specifications. And that allows you to express that information in a context that other clients might want to see it in, right? So if you're pulling in, for example, a companion spec, let's say one of the VDMA specs or an MT Connect companion specification, and you want to see that information in that format, this is what will allow you to do it. So it actually enhances the value of the data that's coming because it's enriching the context. Okay, so there's a lot that's worth looking at there. So it's not just a straight connection and just transferring, the same old values through OPC UA. You can actually enhance them. And once you have all that in the gateway, then finally, of course, the UA gateways also extend further the functionality, because OPC UA can also communicate to cloud. So the UA gateways form kind of a nice jump point where you could use that to actually then send information to the cloud or elsewhere throughout the enterprise. Okay, so that's it for modernizing Brownfield OPC UA style using gateways and aggregators. So hope you found this useful, and talk to you next time. Take care.